Good morning. I am Chris Steyerwalt, and here are your buzz cuts from Fox News First. Off the top, Obama upside down 1 year after his second inaugural. A year ago today, President Obama took the oath of office for a second term, and he promised a lot. And he hasn't delivered a lot. And it's been a rough run. It's been the roughest run, certainly, of his presidency this year. And the polls reflect it. You see there the Real Clear Politics average of polls showing his job approval rating going from 52% to a disapproval rating of 52%. That neat little X there is formed. He is exactly flipped his job approval rating in 1 year from 52% approved to 52% disapproved, 43% approved to 43% disapproved to 43% approved. We will talk about why, what it means, and other things. Trolling. Dems renew push against voter ID laws. Joe Biden, at a speech at MSNBC host Al Sharpton's National Action Network, said that while he was not black himself, he could fight for justice alongside black Americans. The thing he was talking about were laws that require people to show identification before they cast votes. You can tell that it's an election season. This is a favorite of Democrats in the Obama era to talk about voter suppression. We'll talk about voter suppression. Number 3, Christie calls on New Jerseyans to share the sacrifice. Chris Christie is governor of New Jersey. He is having his second inaugural address today, here actually starting right about now. And he wants, apparently, people to know that he is still a bipartisan healing kind of guy. In the talking points released ahead of time, he called on shared sacrifice among New Jerseyans, touted his support for in-state college tuition for undocumented individuals, stuff like that. Number 4, Supreme's hear case on mandatory union dues. Can you be forced to join a union? Well, that's kind of a big issue because we saw in Wisconsin, for example, once people were no longer compelled to join unions, they didn't. And they've seen union membership crater in that state. A lawsuit involving home health care workers who are being compelled to pay union dues and join a union is at the Supreme Court today. It's consequential, I promise. Number 5, Oklahoma GOP primary sooner or later. Jim Bridenstine, the Senate Conservatives Fund, that group founded by Jim DeMint, likes him and hopes he runs for the United States Senate. But a member of the House Republican leadership, James Lankford, a Republican from Oklahoma, he's already in the race. Sooner or later, you're going to have a tough primary fight. And Bridenstine says that he's not going to be rushed into the decision, but the primary is coming up in June, so he better get ready. And last but definitely not least, talk about a bloody campaign. The campaign trail has not been kind to Connorsville, Indiana Police Chief David Counselor, who is running to be county sheriff this year. Counselor, age 60, shot himself in the leg after stopping into the local gun shop to check out new offerings. When he went to return his service pistol, a .40 caliber Glock, to its holster, after comparing it to new weapons, it became tangled in the fleece jacket he was wearing. He told the Indianapolis Star, "I felt it go into the holster and I pushed it, but it was tangled in the material which caused it to discharge. The bullet went into my leg and then into the floor." He was treated and released from the local hospital for a flesh wound to the upper thigh and planned to be back at work today. Counselor recounted to the paper a similar incident 15 years ago when he shot himself in the hand while cleaning his pistol. That one really hurt. As for how it might affect his chances in the election, a rueful counselor said there was at least some upside. Some candidates are out there doing things for kids to try to get elected. Me, I shot myself. What a way to get publicity. What a way, indeed. And you got some publicity in today's Fox News First, which you could have, read, and hold for your very own on your mobile device. If you just go to foxnewspolitics.com, sign up thereon and therein, we'll give it to you. But we're going to do it all right now because it's Power Play.
That fidelity to our founding principles requires new responses to new challenges. That preserving our individual freedoms ultimately requires collective action.
The chilly day, the preacher's cadence, the call to collective action. That was President Obama 1 year ago today, taking the oath of office on the west front of the United States Capitol. Michael Barone was watching then, and he is watching even now. He is a senior political analyst for the Washington Examiner. Yes, yes. He is a resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Yes, yes. But he is also the author of Shaping Our Nation, which is a good book, and people should read it, or you should show it. Don't be ashamed, Michael. This book is excellent. This is an excellent book.
How surges of migration transformed America and its politics.
It's really an excellent book. All right, so here's the thing, Michael. You being a doctor of pollitis, the president...
Recovering pollster.
Well, that's true. Recovering Democrat pollster.
That's right.
That for the president, this is not how it was supposed to go, right?
Well, it's not how it's supposed to go. It's how it sometimes goes
for
second-term presidents, including the 43rd President George W. Bush, who saw his job rating
this has been about it.
Indeed, in time, sag below where Barack Obama is now.
But they're tracking, roughly speaking.
They're tracking, roughly speaking. We're seeing President Obama at 43% approval, and the latest RealClearPolitics.com average of recent polls, 52% disapproval. That's down from 52% approval in November, in that first week of November 2012, when we'd been bombarded with ads, with campaign events and things of that nature.
And let's show the job approval chart. Do you have it, Brooke?
Yeah.
Let's see it.
Basically,
there's exactly what Michael's talking about.
And that mirrored his 51-47 reelection margin in the popular vote over Mitt Romney.
And so you had this very unusual thing in which this is only unusual, not necessarily significant, but where you have his approval and disapproval flipping perfectly in the course of a year.
Yeah, it would actually flipped a little lower. If you look at the beginning of December, we had 40% approval, 55% disapproval. He's recovered a little from that. The Christmas season may have made people feel a little more emollient towards the president, but it's negative. And I think one of the interesting things, and I treated this in a column, in my recent column in the Washington Examiner, is that what are two groups in which his approval has gone down the most when we look at the internals? Hispanics, young people. Hispanics, he got 67% of the popular vote in 2012. Young people, under 30s, he got 60%, 37% went for Romney. Those were big margins. He didn't carry people over 30. He didn't carry white voters. So he relied on that. They're now giving him job approval at just slightly 1, 2, or 3 points above his national average instead of 10 or 15 points, the way he ran ahead of national average in the election.
When the president was asked about his decline with white voters specifically, by the New Yorker in the much ballyhooed interview, and revealing interview, mostly because he talked about reefer, and so people were titillated. But he was asked to explain. Remnick asked him to explain why white voters disapprove of him so much more now than they did before. And the president said, "Well, some people hate me are never going to like me because I'm black. Other people are going to like me expressly because I'm black." My thought was not that this was a particularly racist thing to say, but that in fact it was a detached from reality kind of thing to say. People wouldn't like you less. It's not like they didn't know that he was black. Wouldn't one think that they don't like his policies or how things are going?
Yeah, I think that's right. It was actually a fairly neutral, clear-eyed analysis of where he gets extra support and where he gets somewhat less. And my own view on balance is that the number of voters who were attracted to him, because he'd be the first black president, probably exceeded the number who might have voted for him if he were not black, but would not vote for him if he were black. I think on balance, it was an advantage. You can argue it either way. If reasonable people can disagree about that. But one thing, losing support among the Hispanics and young. Remember, we've been told quite plausibly that the Democratic Party was going to be dominant for a generation because Hispanics and young voters, who were inevitably going to be a larger share of the electorate in years hence, were so heavily for Barack Obama and for Democratic Party candidates for Congress. Those advantages seem to have at least temporarily disappeared in the polling today. And that suggests that the future may not look like a straight line extrapolation from 2008.
Well, and that's why I raised the question about being able to identify what it is. If your job approval number, and the president keeps bumping around there at about 40% in Gallup, 40, 40, 44, 39, 41, boom, 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 boom. If you can't identify the why, if you don't understand why, it is unlikely that you are going to remedy the problem. And I continue to look at this administration, Michael, and I look at this president, and I think corrective action surely must be taken in order to stave off real calamity in midterms.
One of the problems is you've got a public policy in place, the president's signature
really
public policy, Obamacare, that zaps the young because they are being not just asked, required to subsidize insurance for older people who have more net worth on average, who've got a lot more money. You've got Hispanics. You know, they have not been taking up the Obamacare. It's not worked for them. Their version of healthcare.gov.
Oh, no se puede.
It was Cuidado. It's apparently mistitled and written in Spanglish. Was not even up for 2 months, for goodness sake. You know, he hasn't delivered on immigration. He put that on the back burner when Democrats had control, you know, veto-proof control, or not veto-proof, but you know, supermajorities in the Congress in 2009 and 2010. Those are policy problems that are not working out well for him and can't really be solved without abandoning the basic architecture of that legislation. Now, he is repealing it by executive order, just
the untasty bits.
Email and blog posts.
Right, blog posts, governance by blog posts. You know what else is veto-proof? Michael Barone's excellence. It is beyond executive diktat. Michael, we thank you for making time for us today. We are grateful. Now let's take a look at the snow as it falleth. It comes down upon Washington, falling on the just and the unjust. In Washington, it's mostly unjust, but whatever. And there is the snow as it falls on the city. It makes things kind of pretty here. But we are going to trudge forward through it for you in the name of raw political excellence, Internet. Snowmageddon, or whatever we're calling this, will pass by, but we will stay resolute, and we will be back with our panel. So stick around.
Protected for the better part of a century at the highest level. These practices to keep us from voting.
That was Vice President Joe Biden speaking to MSNBC host Al Sharpton's National Action Network's Martin Luther King Day breakfast, warning against Republican efforts to suppress minority votes. And this is Power Play and Hi, Happy Snow Day, Internet. We persevere, we persist, and abide with you, Internet. Abiding with you now is Lisa Booth. She is a senior director. Hi. A senior director. I'll do the talking to the Internet here, Lisa Booth. She is a senior director for the BlackRock Group. That means she is a Republican. That means that you can hire her to try to win stuff and do things. I would like you to meet somebody new, Ebony K. Williams. She's an attorney. She's a talk radio host, and I am given to believe you are a woman of the left. Is this so?
This is so. I'm a progressive. I'm an independent voter, but my views are certainly more left of center.
Okay, we will go with that. And we will also go with it's warm where you are, right? In Los Angeles.
It is very warm where I am. It's almost hot where I am, yeah.
Okay, don't rub it in, here. Ebony. Okay, Ebony. Don't rub it in.
I'm sorry.
On us.
I know,
it's fine.
I know.
We're
sorry,
just
guys.
doing the best that
I have total empathy for you.
We sense it coming through the Internet. Okay, now, Ebony, I want to start with you. Joe Biden said something funny. It is not surprising that Joe Biden said something kind of funny. He said to this group, the Al Sharpton's group, he said that he was talking about Gina McCarthy, who is the head of the EPA, and he said, Gina and I, we may not be black, but I tell you what, we're Irish, and we know how to fight. This issue of voting rights is for Democrats. Seems like as we get into the election year, I know that voting happens in election year, so there's something to do with that. Is there some pandering going on here?
I actually think that Vice President Biden's parallel there was unnecessary, right? At the end of the day, this is a legal issue to me personally. Maybe that's the defense lawyer in me. Let's focus on the constitutional requirements as opposed to kind of making this racial parallel thing he's doing here. I think it becomes a distraction. The stronger argument for Vice President Biden to make is anytime you infringe on a constitutional right, whether it's the right to bear arms, the right to free speech, or here, in this case, the right to vote, you've got to make sure your thing is narrowly tailored and it's the least restrictive way to have impact. And that's really where the Republican effort here is struggling. You've got to have clear and convincing evidence that, there's something legitimate that you're trying to prevent happening. And this issue of voter fraud just doesn't meet that standard of proof. We're seeing that in Pennsylvania, where the law was struck down. And we're seeing it in these DOJ lawsuits that have been filed in Texas and North Carolina.
Lisa, why don't Republicans want minorities to vote? What's wrong with you?
Well, I disagree with your...
Oh, okay.
Let's just be real clear right there.
Okay, all right.
Look, I'm not an attorney, but as someone who spent a lot of time in politics and looking at it through that lens, well, first, I agree with Ebony in the just premise that I really highly disagree and think it's kind of cheap for Vice President Biden to making these comments on, Martin Luther King Day yesterday.
Well, I do want to, just as an aside, I do want to ask as an aside, but I am Irish. I have to say.
Yeah,
but I am Irish. Like, what does that mean? Like, I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express. My mom was Irish. I don't know whether that gives me extra standing when it comes to talking about voter rights. I don't know. Anyway, but go ahead.
Leave it to Vice President Biden, right?
Right. It's a process. But as to this question but I want to get to this point. The central allegation, and the president was going to meet today, Lisa, with the group that he impaneled almost a year ago to look at long lines at precincts because it's snowing. They're not meeting. But the central precept here among Democrats is that Republicans are not doing these things, are not doing voter identification sincerely, but that it is a cynical attempt to suppress minority votes. That's the accusation, right?
I see that. I understand where, I see the Democrats point to that degree. However, it's not true.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, I don't think the majority of Americans agree with, having some sort of voter identification when it comes to voting.
Okay.
I mean, you use it for airline travel. I mean, I even needed an ID to get into this building.
Not surprisingly, Lisa. All right,
well, I am very scary looking.
But I want to check, Ebony. I want you talked about the comparison to the Second Amendment and how you argue that as an attorney, any restriction that is placed upon you as an American when it comes to a constitutionally explicit right, that government should be very cautious. Is it too much to ask people to show identification to vote?
For some people it is. Now, for many of us who, live in a middle-class existence, this is just a common way of life. We have driver's license, we have IDs readily available, many of us have passports. So this seems kind of like a non-issue. But we have to remember, everyone is not like situated. And we live in a country where this is a right for everyone, including those who sometimes are impoverished. And that's where this notion comes from the Democratic Party, that there seems to be some other intent at play. Now, again, is there, an explicit statement of that? Maybe not, but there certainly is a disproportionate effect when you have these types of restrictive laws in place that do seem to affect the underprivileged the underprivileged groups, the young voters. Many times your college age voters don't have their IDs with them. They only have a college ID, and a lot of these states don't accept college IDs as a proper form of identification. Elder voters, many of them no longer drive, so they too do not have driver's license privileges, and so they don't have an ID. So we got to look at the groups most likely affected by this, and that's where that conversation about maybe there's a political agenda at play.
I know the answer to this. Okay. And the answer to this is that states that enact these laws should give away identification, make it totally easy, make it if you want to have a voter ID law, you make it so that it is super easy and free for people who claim indigency to get identification. That should deal with some of that. But I want to talk about the other big politics story today. Let's drop in and pay a call right now on New Jersey Governor Chris Christie as he gets started on his second term. always ought to have a military band playing the national anthem at some point in the show. I like that. There's a little bit more spring in my step today, but that's the scene at Christie's inaugural there in Trenton. He's trying for a bit of a reset, Lisa, looking to get back on the good foot. The most revealing thing, Lisa, that I've heard about Chris Christie through all of this was the allegation, no, I guess they didn't make it as an allegation, but the statement in the New York Times that the first thing that Chris Christie did after he had a 2-hour press conference, and it was long, after he had a 2-hour press conference, was to call Mika Brzezinski, who is the co-host of MSNBC's morning show. That blew me away. I have to say, that was like, you didn't want to call the chairman of the Republican Party, you didn't want to call, nobody. It was like, I got to get Mika back. What is this guy doing?
I can't speak to that.
Okay, I'm not saying you were on the call.
I would not, necessarily advise for him to make that phone call. However, I think Chris Christie is going to be fine. I mean, obviously, the liberal left is rejoicing at any opportunity to knock him. He is an incredibly strong candidate, and I think that MSNBC's jump on this and, wanting to attack him.
Why is he still nuzzling? If he's such a strong candidate, and Ebony, if Chris Christie is such a strong candidate, why would he care? Wasn't the answer to MSNBC, he finally got upset when MSNBC did a big dump on him. They got the mayor of Hoboken who came on and said, I personally felt like it was bad when he was giving out Sandy relief. I felt pressure in New Jersey politics. Who could imagine pressure in New Jersey politics? My goodness.
Full context
heavens to Murgatroyd! But the fact that Chris Christie is in a lot of ways a creation of MSNBC and these other news organizations. Now he's kind of biting the hand that fed him, right?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised to see that kind of attack, because at the end of the day, I agree. I mean, he's one of the most highly publicized political figures of our day. So, whether it's MSNBC, Fox, CNN, whatever, I mean, he has to kind of be happy with all of that press he's getting. I actually agree with Lisa on this. I think progressives or left-wingers who are saying that this is over for Chris Christie are being incredibly premature. 2016 is a long time away, and we know that 3 years politically. Yeah, I mean, let's look at some of the pre-election scandal President Bill Clinton survived. I think seriously, right? So let's not jump the gun here. I think Chris Christie, if he handles this the right way, and I have full confidence, this is a very politically savvy man. Again, I think there's a Clinton parallel to their ability to come out of scandal.
You better be careful about that.
Better for it. Yeah, well, it's a true story. I'm always going to tell the true story here, and I think that we've yet to see Christie, really come full circle from this yet. But I think that that's coming.
Well, in 1992, Lisa, Bill Clinton was in trouble. You were 4, but Bill Clinton was in trouble because he had done something he ought not to have done with somebody he ought not to have done it with a lot. And his wife went on television and they did an interview and Stand By Your Man. I'm not going to be some Tammy Wynette Stand By Your Man. And then she was like, actually, now that I think about it, I am going to stand by my man, and all of that stuff. But that was the media world. And the conversation was very different now. And I'm not talking about whether Chris Christie's a good candidate or a bad candidate or whatever else. But in the world of dealing with media today, and we saw this play out with Mitt Romney. We saw it play out with John McCain. When Republicans try to stay in the barrel with the establishment press, when you're trying to say, hey, New York Times, hey, MSNBC, I can do this, I'm really okay, in the end, they're just going to tip you over.
But see, I think the difference between Clinton and with Chris Christie
is a lot.
We don't have enough time for that.
Is a lot.
Yeah, there are a lot of differences. But no, the fact is Clinton did it. And literally. And with Chris Christie, there has been nothing connecting him to this incident. yet. I mean, maybe that'll surface.
All he has admitted to is that some people who work for him were rotten.
Right. So this is a bump in the road, which is going to happen if you're going to be potentially the presidential frontrunner for Republicans.
These ladies are too smart. They're too smart for me. I'm here trolling for talking about media stories, and they're like, no, Chris, calm down. I'm glad that you listened, Ebony, to the better angels of your mercy today and found that inner wisdom. We thank you for
there needs to be an adult in the room.
Two. And it sends some sunshine from L.A., so Ebony, we thank you. And Lisa, good luck in your taxi cab ride, because it's going to be rough out there. It's true. But we will mush forward, and somehow, whatever I have to do, make it back here to do this for you again tomorrow, because I'm awful fond of you, Internet. So we'll do it, and we'll be back with more. But now, tomorrow, as we like to do every day, a word from our friend Charles.
The whole strategy of al-Qaeda, as explained by Zawahiri and Osama bin Laden, was to establish regional and local insurgencies to attack the Arab states whom they saw as acting in the interest of the infidels, starting with Saudi Arabia. The whole idea was local insurgencies with a global perspective. I think Obama still, to this day, after half a decade, doesn't understand at all who we are and who he is up against in the war on terror.